Welcome back. In this screencast, we're going to make a simple login script using AJAX with jQuery and PHP. So, first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and create an index.php file and the login form. And we'll just make it post back to itself. We're going to ask for a username and a password. And a submit button. And so there's our login form. We can go take a look at it. Looks great, really fancy. I'm really digging it. So let's go ahead and write some very basic PHP code that's going to check for a post. And if a post exists, we're going to check username against test and password against test. So if the username and password were both test, we'll go ahead and redirect the user to their dashboard, let's say, dashboard.php. And if it wasn't correct, we're going to tell them why. You didn't have the right info. Alright, so usually what you'd do is you'd run your username and password against values in a database and then set up your session data and redirect the user, but this will work just fine for our needs. We have an error message right here. So if we go ahead and try this out, you can see that if we don't enter test and test, we're going to get a user error message, and if we do, we're going to be redirected to the dashboard, which actually doesn't exist. Welcome, yo. Alright. So here we are. Username, blah, blah. You didn't have the right info to get in. So if we enter test and test, welcome, yo. Alright. So that's great. It's a login script that's going to work for people who don't have JavaScript enabled, which is really important to us because we don't want to alienate anybody for being, out of date. Unfortunately, a lot of people are, and that's just the way it goes. There's nothing you can do about it. And maybe if you're running Joe Blow's blog, you can ignore those people, but let's try to do it the right way. Let's go ahead and create an ajax.php file that will run our AJAX against, and we're going to start wanting to include JavaScript. Now, as we were just saying, the concept of graceful degradation suggests that we always want our code to work with or without JavaScript, if at all possible. By making it work without JavaScript first, that's exactly what we're doing. So I included jQuery, and I have these script tags. Once the document object model loads, I'm going to run the code inside this inline function. And that code is going to, let's add a name, login form. That code is actually going to bind the submit event of that form. So we'll do form name equals login form to select it, and then bind the submit event so that when a user submits the form, it'll run what's inside this function. Now typically, what's run inside the function will be followed up with a regular form submit. So our page will actually load and the post variables will be sent to index.php. We don't really want that to happen because we don't actually need to reload the page. As a matter of fact, there's no reason for us to be implementing this in AJAX if we were going to reload the page. So we're going to tell it return false. This way, once the form is submitted, nothing will happen. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Let's enter some values here. Login, 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 nothing's happening. So here we'll actually post the data to our ajax.php file. This object contains our post parameters, and then we have a callback function. This function is run when the post has completed, and the data variable is a consequence of the return values of that post. We want to actually tell the post to expect a JSON object back, and let's go ahead and fill this in. We want to send the username, and we want to send the password. And then that's that. So then we'll call this function, and let's go ahead and set up AJAX.php. So again, just to clarify, we're submitting to AJAX.php, and we're setting the post variables username and passwords with the values from the blanks that we created earlier. So if we go over to AJAX.php, why don't we go ahead and just use the code that we already wrote. If there's a post, check it, and if it works, instead of just redirecting, why don't we just mark that this login succeeded and tell redirect the JavaScript where to redirect. So let's say we want to redirect to dashboard.php, and if we're wrong, we'll say success is equal to false, and data message is equal to your info is wrong. Now we have the response built into an array, and we need to get it back into our JavaScript. So what we're going to do is we're going to echo a JSON object made from the data array back. So when this function gets the return value from ajax.php, it's going to evaluate the JSON, the JavaScript code that it's returning, and create the data variable, which is an object that contains the information returned. Okay, so let's go ahead and do if data.success is equal to just do if data.success else. Now we're going to go ahead location.href and redirect them to data.redirect, and problem solved. Once they're logged in, they're in their dashboard, and then it was all done with AJAX and fanciness. And if it failed, however, we want to tell them what's wrong. So let's go ahead and make an error console. It's just an empty div that we can fill with our error message. There we go. Alright, so we're going to set the HTML contents of the error console div, and we're going to fill it with the data.message. So let's go ahead and save this and run it. So let's go ahead and type an error, erroneous combination of information. Your info is wrong, but if we type test and test, it redirects us to the dashboard. Now, just if we're going to fancy this up a little bit, what we can do is we can start with this. Actually, let's just go ahead and say when it first runs the page, we'll grab the error console and we'll hide it. Then, if we have an error, we can set the HTML and we can tell it to fade in. That's a pretty fancy way of doing it. So blah blah blah, we have an error, bam, your info is wrong. Nice and fancy, nice and cute. So if we resubmit it, we'll want to do something with that error console. So error console dot slide up. So our information is wrong. We have information is wrong, blah blah blah. Ta-da! It's all animated and fancy. We can change this to slide down for more consistency, but really, you just do what makes sense for your website. See, nice and handy. So basically, that's how you can make a simple login script with AJAX and jQuery. But just to double check, let's go ahead and disable our JavaScript. Disable Java is not quite what I was going for. disable all JavaScript. Now reload, enter the info, log in, and as you can see, it's posting again. Everything's still working, but it's working for people who don't have JavaScript enabled. Anyway, thanks for watching. Leave me comments on how you think I could make these screencasts better, or what kind of information you'd like to have me go over.